So we want to review some things that we covered for Unit 1 during our first day of Microsoft IT Bootcamp training. So last week we kind of reviewed the basic structure of a C# program, data types, variables, the libraries that are used to create C# programs, and the tools that are used in pre-processing or preparing for your for software development, such as using flowcharts to display or kind of guide you. This pretty much lays out the flow of your program, so as you are programming, you are able to stay on pace. So let's start a new project here, just as a quick refresher. I'm going to go ahead and make sure this project, save it appropriately on my USB drive. Alright, I'm just going to give it a name, Unit 1, and this is going to be a console application, and of course we are using the C# programming language. So once our program loads, we see our libraries up here, and we see our structure. Our first class, of course, is the program class. Each C# program is given this program by default from the Visual Studio application. And of course, each program.cs file always begins with a static main method. And again, this is kind of like the entryway or the starting point for your program. So to make a quick simple program, just to remind ourselves how we did this last week, I'll go ahead to my screen here. This shows you a simple program that displays the message "Hello World." So we'll just start typing in between our curly braces here. We're going to be using the method from the console class, which is part of the system library. So we're going to put console.writeLine, and then we have our parentheses because we know anytime we have a method, it's going to have some kind of parameter of data that's going to need to be enclosed in parentheses. And this WriteLine method actually uses or accepts a string parameter. So we're going to go ahead and put our string text in here, "Hello World," and every line, every statement in C# it must end in a semicolon. Right. So one thing it does not have up here is the console.read key. Read key line, and I use that method to stop the program, because if you run the program now, it's going to automatically run your line of code, and then it's going to flash and end. Let's see here for a second. So you seen it popped up and then it went away. So I always tell my students to go ahead and add the line console.read key, because this tells the computer to wait on you before the program to wait on you before it ends. So next we want to discuss variables and data types. So I've just created a variable here, an integer variable, by simply just typing in the keyword int. You can go ahead and do this, int, and then give it a variable name. I've named that one age, to just show you real quick how to use variables. Now this is just creating an integer variable, but if I want to go ahead and actually declare a variable and initialize it to a value, then I could just go ahead and say int age equals 0, which may be really good for you to do at the beginning of your programs to ensure that the value of this variable when the program starts, it is 0. Alright, so that's how we create a variable. Note this is outside of a method, so this is a global variable. And as you can see here, if you're not familiar with writing comments in C#, you just create a comment by putting 2 forward slashes. And as a reminder, comments are not executed when the program compiles. So we'll also create a string variable. We'll name this one name. Right. And of course, if I want to initialize it, I could always say name to ensure that the name variable is always blank when the program begins. So now that we've created a couple of variables, if I wanted to make these variables local, I could have simply declared them down here the same way I declared them there. The only difference is, of course, if I declare variables locally, they can only be used by the method in which they have been created. And if you create a local variable and you don't use it, you're going to receive an error because it's expecting you to definitely, it's kind of like you went out of your way to create this variable. So the computer is basically expecting for you to use it because you know that variables are memory locations. So if you're creating them, you're using up space on the computer, and the computer's letting you know that, hey, you haven't used it. So if you don't use it, you're basically wasting space. Okay, so we'll go ahead and say hello world here. Let's actually ask the user what their name is. So if we want to get some information from the user, we actually need the console.readLine method. All right, and there's no parameter that you would pass with the console.readLine method. However, you would need to put this inside of a variable. You couldn't just say console.readLine because you're asking the user for some information. So you have to put the information somewhere. So when you're doing a console.readLine, just always remember that you need to be assigning that information that the user enters into a variable. All right. So now here we've said console.readLine, what is your name? And well, actually, it might be a good idea to actually tell the user what they're entering. So right above that, we can say console.writeLine. What is your name? Okay. And we come here. See, I got an error. What is this telling me? Okay, an object reference is required for a non-static field, method, or property. So what this is saying is that this is a static method. So in order for me to be able to call this or use this name here, I need to also make this variable static. So that way I don't need to create an instance of the object in order to get to this field. And we'll talk about static methods and variables or fields later. So just remember that when you got static methods that you're trying to use that don't need an object required to call them, then you want to make sure that the variable that you're using is also static. So moving forward, now we've asked the user so we're asking the user what their name is, and once the user begins entering their name, because understand this line of code here is going to have the user enter, it's going to have the user receive a cursor, and so the user can type something. So once the user types something, I've modified this now. I went ahead and took world out. We want the user, the program, to say hello and whatever the user's name is, rather than hello world. So I went ahead and took that out, and I added the plus symbol here, which is the concatenation operator, because we want to concatenate this string of text with this variable name. So we'll go ahead and type name, and now it should read the program when it runs. It should ask the user what their name is. The user is going to type in their name, and then it should output hello and whatever the user's name is. Whenever you push another key, the program should end. So let's F5 to run the program. So what is your name? Say Tony. It says hello Tony. All right.